guys, I'm Lavetta.
I'm Miriam.
And this is Notorious Women Podcast, a comedy podcast about some of history's most notorious women.
That's right.
How you doing, darling?
I'm good. I'm like,
good?
Yeah, it's cold, but I kind of like it.
I know. We have such thin blood. I mean, it's cold. What is it, 50 something?
Yeah, we're in California. Let me be clear. When I say it's cold, it's 57 degrees. So,
I mean, that's cold to us.
It's cold.
It's like, I'm with you. I have a weighted blanket. I have the heater going.
Yes.
I found the best thing before we get started.
Oh, tell me.
I found an air purifier that's also a heater.
Stop.
That rotates. It's very expensive.
Everything.
But
I need this.
It also, you can monitor like the air quality in the room as well as the temperature.
Listen, if the people that make this wanna give us some money for advertising,
who makes it? I can't think of the name of the people.
We could support you, and you could support me in my need for this, because I know that my husband would look at it and be like, no.
I will say, because California is so dusty because we're in the desert, and so you have to use air purifiers, and then not to mention when the fires get started, but usually you get cold. Like, so if it's like 50 something degrees and it's running, you're like, oh, I'm cold.
In our defense, when they built up California with like walls, right, and roofs, right, they forgot to add padding. So our walls are made of paper. Like, I go back east and like that's brick, and we don't have brick. No. We have like paper and then like paper mache, it's like layered. And sometimes it's cute, but it does not work. Okay.
Yeah, there's no insulation. And so, I can't think of the brand name, but it's an air purifier that's also a heater. I have it in my bedroom. I'm thinking about having one in the living room, but it's pretty big because it's supposed to be actually for like 1,000 square foot area.
That's my house. And you need two of them?
Well, because it's in one room, and it's like, is it cleaning the room really in the living room, like in the other room? But like,
it probably is, Lavetta.
They have smaller ones, but the review for the smaller one was not as good as the big one. And I have to admit, it was expensive, but it's worth every penny because
I need one for my downstairs.
Of what you were saying.
It's freezing in there.
Yeah. Yeah. And it works. It heats up. It's like, but not too hot. Like, it works. So I'll send you when I figure out I'll send you the link. So yeah, but I guess we should get started. I believe that I am first this week.
Okay.
I think.
Girl.
I think.
Maybe. Listen.
Let's go with that.
I have but one brain, and it only works so well. So
let's go with that. Okay. I'm first.
Okay,
so my notorious woman this week is that was terrible. My notorious woman this week.
Try that again.
I'm trying to do the air horn. It's terrible.
I kept trying to do the air horn the other day because I don't know why. I thought it was funny, and nobody in my family knows what the air horn is and why it's used. I'm the only one, and I sound like which is wrong. Right? It's not correct. And so everyone was like, what is are you okay? Are you stroking out? What is happening?
What is going on? Well, mine is, drum roll, please. I know. My notorious woman this week is Sister Rosetta Tharpe.
Okay.
Do you know who that is?
I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm excited.
Okay, so this is
I'm guessing she's a nun. Okay.
Not quite.
Okay.
So
I'm wrong.
This is going to be good. I can't wait. You're going to be like,
go.
No.
Oh,
okay.
Right. Entertain me.
So, Sister Rosetta Tharpe was born on March 20th, 1915 in Cotton Plant, Arkansas, to Katie Bell.
They literally called it Cotton Plant. They called it Cotton Plant.
America.
As
America,
in,
bitches.
Let's bring slaves here to plant cotton.
And this is Arkansas. So
Yeah.
it's technically the Midwest, even though Arkansas is very southern.
It's very
in
southern. I've been to
culture.
Arkansas.
Yeah. Oops.
There was a dog that tried to attack me there, but it's fine. I'm sure there's also I know a dancer who does beautiful art there. So I'm not judging the entire state on this dog, but I personally am traumatized by said dog. I had to get up on a bed so that I wasn't attacked. Anyways, please go on.
So random. I was attacked by a dog in Arkansas.
I was. And I think his name was like something like Get Him Rover or some. It was a moment.
Get him.
Yeah, his owner was wearing overalls before overalls were in fashion. Go on. Okay.
Oh, God. Even though I try and fight the Southern stereotypes, sometimes they're true.
But also, friend, dancer, artist, does beautiful work.
Yeah.
Very like all places. It's
No, we love Arkansas. We
Yeah,
love
we
all
do.
the states.
It's
in
beautiful.
The states.
It's just the dog I'm mad about. Go on.
Poor dog. You were on his property. It sounds like.
Probably true.
I'm on the dog side.
I know
Miriam.
you are. I know that. Okay.
I'm always team dog. So Rosetta Tharpe was born on March 20th, 1915 in Cotton Plant, Arkansas to Katie Bell and Willis Atkins, who were tenant farmers. Some sources say they were cotton pickers, but usually after the Civil War, a lot of Black people became migrant workers or sharecroppers or, AKA tenant farmers,
Right.
which is a form of slavery basically. But, so I just said tenant farmers. So they were just like not even working class. They were probably poor, just had to work hand to mouth kind of people.
Got it. Yeah.
Now, side note, some sources say that her birth name was Rosetta Atkins or Atkinson. So, but I think it's hard to tell sometimes because when you're doing research on Black people in this country, from back then, it's hard to kind of compare the census reports because sometimes
they didn't care.
They didn't care, but also sometimes the census takers didn't understand them right, or sometimes they were illiterate and they just wrote it down wrong. But there's that. Yeah. But for the most part, she was born on March 20th, 1915. So now her mother, Katie, was also an evangelist. She was a singer as well, a mandolin player, and a deaconess, missionary at a Pentecostal church that was founded in 1897.
Okay.
Now, so not a lot is known about her father, Willis, but they do know that he was a great singer. So Rosetta probably got her singing abilities from him. Okay. And then, obviously her love of her music from her parents in general. And then exposure to different kinds of instruments with her mother's work at the church. So it sounds like her mother was like a Bible thumper, pretty much.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah. And just so Pentecostal, aka sanctified, as we say in the South.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Pentecostal religion it's a Protestant part of Christianity, but it's like hardcore. It's like women can't wear pants.
Ooh.
It's like they speak in tongues. It's like conservative Christian, just so you know, like Pentecostal, but they also have very spirited, as we say, church services because the music is very
That's what I
intense.
think of when I hear Pentecostal. I think of like the healing. Yeah?
Yeah. Well, that can also be Baptist, but Pentecostal are like people who speak in tongues. Like, like that's like a Pentecostal thing.
Listen, all of my education of this comes from the media. Like comes from like, what's that show? It was really good. They brought it back. This is what I'm reminded of, but I can't remember the name of it. Oh, I don't know. And Tatiana Maslany played this person that is in my head right now. Anyway.
Oh, you mean Orphan Black?
No, can't remember. I'll tell you later. It's
because Tatiana's
it's the detective guy, Percy Mason.
Perry Mason.
Perry Mason. That took me 12
minutes.
minutes.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, just for context, like Pentecostal is like hardcore even to other Protestant Christians.
Oh, okay.
But apparently in this particular congregation, they really encourage like the musical expression, dancing, lots of dancing and praise. And interestingly enough, the women were allowed to sing and teach in this church. So,
that's
my.
cool.
Yeah. So sometimes it just depends on where, even if you're with a particular sect of religion, like it depends on where, at least with Protestant Christianity, what state you're in and which congregation, honestly, sometimes. So
I know
early
so
on,
little about like the differences.
well, like I was raised Baptist, right? I was raised a Southern Baptist. Southern Baptist can also be very intense, but in my church, my pastor was like, the church I went to mostly when I was growing up, my pastor was like a musical pastor. Like he could like really, really sing. Like he
cool.
toured around when he was in college, like in a men's singing. Like he was an amazing singer. And so his daughter was also an amazing singer. Like we had amazing singers in our church, like a lot of them. So and it was very progressive. Like none of this women can't wear pants, like none of that kind of stuff.
So
but
a beautiful singing voice, and like women could like wear what they wanted to.
No, it was just a plain like, it was a very I think sort of like standard Baptist church. But then I've heard other people who were also raised as Southern Baptist, and they seem more like Pentecostal, like very strict in like socially strict rules. So I think it just depends on where in the congregation. So they're in Arkansas. And like I said, her mother was like her mother really believed in reaching the people through music.
Okay.
And again, she played the mandolin, she played the piano, guitar, like all kinds of stuff. So she got Rosetta into playing it. And she knew, I think her mother just had like, she knew if she could teach this young girl how to sing and do all this stuff, that would attract, because that's how churches bring in people. They really kind of like lure them in with the music, at least black churches. They lure them in with the music, and then hopefully they get the word and they get saved while they're there, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
I've been to some churches. It didn't work, but they tried.
It didn't work. Yeah.
No.
But that's how like, it's a way to get people who are, the what do we call them? The secular people, the non-religious people, to bring them in. You're going to bring them in, lure them in through music. That's why the black church, that's why the black church like influenced so many singers, because that's where they get their training almost. It's like informal training and performance skills. Cause like, they'd be like, go baby, sing baby. That's how the church. So that's how to get the kids. It's like, it's all like propaganda. What they do through music.
Does it feel good to sing? Okay.
Yeah, and it feels good to sing. So
see you next week. All right.
Yeah, I think her mother had this idea. Her mother had this plan, but Rosetta was also just like, she took to the music. So by age 6, she was singing and playing the guitar in church.
What?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a little behind in educating my children, I think. Anyways.
6.
Wow.
She was so good. And her mother, so it'd be her and her mother would be doing like singing and performing.
Oh, how cute is that?
So cute.
That's
but then
adorable.
She was really good. Like her mother would accompany her on the guitar or the mandolin, on the piano, whatever. And little Rosetta learned how and she obviously had a singing voice. And usually when people find out that they can sing, they love singing. So, and I can just only imagine how cute it was, but she was so good that people did not believe their eyes when they saw her.
Wow.
They were like, she was a wonderkind. She was a musical prodigy. Like, really.
Wow. She might have been.
So much so that they called her by this time, age 6, they called her Little Rosetta. She was just like a wonderkind. So, she was so popular, and the church became so popular because of this little wonderkind and just like the singing and guitar playing and this miracle of it, that they started. And her mother also, again, believed in, spreading the word through music, especially. Right. So they began to tour around, and this is like one of those, like everyone's heard of like the Chitlin circuit or what have you, but there's always been a circuit, a gospel circuit or evangelical troop circuit, where these people travel around in different churches.
Yeah.
So it's like a tour, but it's like a church tour.
So is it the same, what's the word? version of the all the evangelical churches, or would you go into different denominations? Is the word I'm thinking of.
Exactly. So you know how like a tour, what we think of as a tour, people go to different venues throughout different cities, right? So this is what they were doing, but the venues are the churches that are within that same form of religion, that same denomination. You just said it, denomination.
Why can't we remember this word? It's not a hard word.
But some of the greats have come from this. So this is in obviously 1920s, but Sam Cooke came through this.
Yeah.
The great Aretha Franklin, but a lot of Black performers that became like household names and like successful artists, a lot of times they cut their teeth on this kind of tour.
I gotcha.
I didn't
really know that. I knew I knew Aretha came from church background, but I didn't realize like it was really a tour. They were really singing every night, and it wasn't just every Sunday kind of thing.
And the tour, like if you have Vacation Bible School or like just a visiting congregation, and like I remember like even when I was in church, I was in the youth choir, of course. Like we would go to visiting churches, but it was just in the city. But I think once they realized how good you were, they would like invite you to these other churches they wanted to see. And then that would get congregation to come in, people to visiting because they heard about little Rosetta. So they're like, I want to see this 6-year-old.
I mean, I want to see little Rosetta. I'll be honest.
I want to see a little 6-year-old play the guitar and sing. Are you kidding me?
So yeah, that's fine.
So, but she was so good, so good that, and she had developed a following. So, but by the mid 1920s, when she was about 10 or 11, she and her mother moved away because you can imagine they're living in cotton plant, like they're struggling. So
where's her father at this point?
The mother and the father broke up. So again, not a lot is known about why they broke up but this is a hard life being, a migrant worker working on these, once formerly plantations that are still working like plantations. Like this is not glamorous work. And they haven't really opened up avenues for Black people to really make a living, particularly Black women. So a lot of times that's why Black people got into the performing arts as well, because you could actually make a living. And once you realize you have talent, you also fall in love, as we both know, with performing as well.
Yeah.
So, but a lot of, with a great migration, of Black people out of the South. So, which started around this time. So eventually, her and her mother left and moved to Chicago.
I was just going to say, was it Chicago? Because there's I know about that history. Public school taught me a little. I remember the chapter, The Great Migration. We were not nice to Black people even after the Civil War. And so they left, where they found peace and joy in Chicago. End of book. Bye.
Yeah, exactly. No, she's being sarcastic, of course. But like
being very sarcastic.
For our listeners who don't know, the Great Migration is in reference to Black people leaving the South in droves and going to the North and going to northern cities and Midwestern cities, bigger cities, to find opportunities for work. Because she's right. I can speak to, this is my family, basically. Even though my family went more Southern, it's, okay, yeah. Like, I was like,
you're from Florida. What are you talking about?
My family, like, I trace them back to like some of my ancestors to plantations in like North Carolina, South Carolina. But then like as the years went on, they show up in Georgia, Alabama, Florida. I'm like, so you guys are going the wrong way.
The deep South. Okay.
You know what? They were looking for? Work. Migrant farmers. That's what they were looking for. Because Florida had the orange groves.
Yes.
Like, as well as other, so they would follow seasonal work, and then you realize, we can actually get steadier work, and then you go throughout Florida. But that's what I realized, because when I started looking into that, I was like, you guys are going the wrong way. No, go the other way. But my people went more Southern, but a lot of Black people went, like Rosetta and her mom went up to Chicago, and they called her mother, actually, her mother was referred to as Mother Katie. Katie. So it's like a very church and religious thing. So when they went to Chicago, because again, her mother's a Bible thumper. So they settled at the Roberts Temple Church of God. in Christ on 40th Street. And now, like a lot of Black people who moved from the South to the North during this time, there was culture shock. I don't think people realize the United States is very big. And so when you move, like when we moved from the East Coast out here, when I moved from the East Coast out here, it's culture shock. It's different. It's all different. American, but it is different. So their culture shock was not.
I've traveled to the Midwest, and I grew up in California with, like, even though I was in a town with not a ton of Jews, it's not that far from LA, and it was fine. California is very sort of liberal. It was fine, but I remember being a teenager and going to Minnesota in the outskirts, and I was suddenly a Jesus killer. That was awkward. Yeah. And you think from the outside America is one thing, and then you travel through America and you're like, wow, it's different.
Yeah, it's different. That's why, there's certain things that we can say, oh, that's American, but when you're talking about Americana, it just depends on where in the country you are and what time period. Certain cities have very specific, and they have subcultures too, like within these cities. Like even in the South is different. Texas is different than Florida. Florida is different than Georgia. Like, there's some similarities. Like you can see it in the barbecue. There's different kinds. There's North Carolina barbecue, which I don't like. But then there's Texas barbecue. Then there's
Lavetta, I think you just started a barbecue war when you just said that.
I'm sorry, guys. I do not like Carolina barbecue. Nope.
Wow.
Nope. It's too much vinegar.
That I'm not allowed to be friends with you anymore because Sal is really mad right now. What? Calm down. I'm just kidding.
I'm just saying, guys. I'm just saying. But just so people know, like, when she and her mother moved to Chicago, they go to this church, but they're also being influenced by other Black people who've moved there. So they're being influenced by the Delta blues. They're being influenced by New Orleans jazz. They're being influenced by all kinds of things. And they obviously have a very strong Southern gospel background. But at this church, she actually performed even more, and then obviously continued the tour. But like her musical style became her own. And it's kind of, I think this is that mashup is what people think of like traditional, like the root of like Black music, because it is a gumbo, if you will. It's a gumbo of a bunch of things. But all of these, like, delicious. Jazz, obviously we know jazz originated out of New Orleans, but like there's probably different forms. Like once these people left New Orleans and went into different parts of the country, and then other musicians there, then they had their own spin on jazz. And then like, that's why even in like soul music, there's like Memphis soul, then there's like, California, there's California soul, there's Detroit soul, there's like different kinds of soul music. And so there's also different kinds of Black music. So in the United States, but
listen, do you remember the show in New York, Ain't Nothing But the Blues? This will date me. It was a long time ago.
No.
Oh, it's so good. That. I have the CD, which also will date me. So I'm pretty sure that I know all about the history of Black music, because not only did I watch the show on Broadway with privileged money, I bought the CD.
So you know all about all of Black music. I
actually don't need to know anything else because I have the entirety of the education necessary.
Yes.
Thanks. Okay.
You're welcome.
Mm-hmm.
So
I realized,
she's obviously
oh my God,
playing
all I know
people.
is this one CD. Okay.
Miriam, you're not doing much to play down that Karen.
I decided
moniker.
to lean in.
I think so.
I have one Black friend. Anyways.
I can't with you.
Oh God.
So, but it was here in Chicago where like she continued to perform, her and her mother. Yeah. And her fame grew because again, she's only 10 or 11.
Oh my God, I keep forgetting she's only 10 or 11. Yeah. Child. Okay.
They continued to tour as well on these church tours. And then, but again, her fame, she became even more famous. And she became really known as like that little girl who with the guitar, with the big guitar. Like,
yeah, okay, cute, right?
So she stayed there, and then about around 1934, at age 19, she married a preacher at the temple by the name of Thomas Thorpe. And he was someone who had accompanied her and her mother on many of the tours. And apparently her mother highly encouraged the marriage as well, because her mother's old school, you know.
Marry her before you touch her. Yes.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the marriage lasted only a few years, but she decided to adopt a version of her husband's last name as a stage name, becoming Sister Rosetta Tharpe. And that's where the sister comes from, because she's traveling in the church circuit.
Got it. Yes. Got it.
Singing
the
gospel
not
music.
a nun. Got it.
Now, many of her friends thought that Thomas was just using her talent to prop up his congregation and was never really interested personally in her or her gifts. Also, he was like really old fashioned, like a lot of these sort of religious guys. He just basically believed a woman should be seen and not heard, and should only be here to serve her man, basically. So you can imagine, though, like whether her mother intended to or not, like when you're out there performing, and they said she had this performing style where she would, like, you know, because traditionally, like old Negro spirituals, which is where gospel comes from, is, you know, usually kind of somber, you know, songs of redemption and suffering. But like the way she sang gospel, she put it like a very light touch on it. It's very like hopeful and enthusiastic. And they said often when she would sing, she'd be looking up into the sky like she's communing with God on her own, but she'd have like this big smile on her face. Like, so that's another thing that attracted people, that they could hear gospel music and feel hopeful and like like it's a truly spiritual like experience, but a spiritual that you would watch her and feel hopeful and good.
I mean,
and that was her power. Yeah,
I would enjoy that too, I think.
Yeah.
As a Jewish person, but maybe not, you know what I mean? Like that sounds very like she connected to humanity in a way that people were not used to and really, really loved. That's cool.
So now in 1938, so the marriage ended. In 1938, at age 23, she left her husband.
I feel like so much has happened in her life and she's only 23.
Only 23, yeah.
Oh my God.
But at this point, she is a 17-year veteran of singing.
Yeah, right?
At 23. Dang. So she and her mother decided to move to New York City because I think they really decided to kind of take this like her musical gifts, and really like take it on the road and make a living at it.
Yeah, good.
And although she would marry several times after this, she would remain Rosetta Tharpe for the rest of her life as a professional name.
Okay.
Now, of course, because she's locally famous. Like even in New York, they've heard of her. So once she arrives, and it's the 1930s in Harlem.
Oh, yes.
So she performs at the Cotton Club with Cab Calloway and with a John Hammond's Spirituals to Swing concert at Carnegie Hall.
Wow.
Both of which, you know, gained her even more fame and a little notoriety, because suddenly, again, she comes from a very religious background, even though she's been singing all these most of her life. But then suddenly you're in the Cotton Club, which is a very secular, non-religious
I was just going to say that must have been a huge moment for her, you know.
But she went with it because, again, this is where, like, you know, Black music, different forms of Black music is meshing together, which is very American. She went along with it. But her friends back in Chicago were hearing about this, and they were kind of scandalized, because these are like women, again, who only wear dresses and skirts and like very conservative, socially conservative women. But, you know, and that is a fear that religious people have about the industry. Like, they feel like everybody's going to become a drug addict or a prostitute if they start singing secular music. They really kind of believe that.
I actually, like, very still to this day, I remember a friend of my parents told me, I was like 26. I was like in my 20s. I was still being like, I'm going to be a famous actress. No one can stop me. And they were saying like that someone had called into some like religion show and said, hey, I want to be an actor, but I don't want my morality to be, I don't know what the word was, to be.
Yep.
And the response was, you should go be an actor and teach morality to all those. This was like 15 years ago. But when I say 15 years ago, I obviously mean 20 years ago, because I don't want to be the age that I am, but it is what it is. So here we are. And I remember like having to be like, no one what do you think is happening?
They
waiting
think that
5 hours to audition to say 3 lines of a monologue and then you go home. Nothing is happening. And then you're in a show and you're just tired because you've been rehearsing for 3 hours and you'd like to go home now.
You know what they think? They think all of that stuff that came out with the Harvey Weinstein thing.
Yeah.
They think everybody's experience. And they
also,
think everybody in Hollywood is behaving that
and let's
way.
be like real. They were being abused, right?
Yeah.
Like these women were not like, oh, I guess I'm going to get naked and curse all day. You know, like this idea that like the entertainment, that the fact that it's still around, that what's wrong with the world or what's like, that there is still an ideology of that is crazy to me. It's like everything.
I mean, to be fair, there is an element of that, but I think there's an element of that in every industry. There's an element of that in the religious sector. Should we go there? No, we're not going to go there.
I don't know. That's dangerous. We're
but
poking
I mean, this
the
is
bear,
19,
Lavetta.
But this is in 1930s, especially.
Right.
So they definitely thought that. And so, but she went along with it. She was like, this is part of show business. I think she had been traveling long enough to realize that it's also, and like you said, I also think that there's a part of her that's like, yeah, I'm actually, like what this advice was, I'm actually bringing the gospel to these people,
right?
While
What's
they're
wrong?
singing and tapping. And that's kind of like her style. Like even in the gospel songs, it's very swingy. It was very like energetic. It was very bright and hopeful in the way in her performances.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
So needless to say, even though some of the songs she was singing was had a religious tone to it and some of it was secular, she was very popular, obviously. Okay. She's at Cotton Club and all of these places. So on that same year, on October 31st, she recorded for the first time. So she recorded.
Oh, very cool.
4 sides for for Decca Records. So 4 songs. The first gospel songs to be recorded, reportedly.
Oh, really?
Yep.
So, okay. So we talked about Mamie Smith.
Mm-hmm.
And she was the first, was it blues?
Blues, yeah.
So okay, this is amazing. It's 34?
1930, 1934.
That feels late. Doesn't it feel late to you?
Yeah. 1938, actually.
1938.
So, but again, that's when, and I was saying that with the Mamie Smith one, like Black audiences have been seeing these people for years, touring.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
But like being recorded is a different thing. It's just like it's just like the vaudeville performers or the Chitlin Circuit performers. Yeah. By the time they got to like Hollywood and got filmed, they were 30, 40 years in. Like
yeah, exactly.
They're old hat and they're making 5 times as much money to do like a portion of the work that they were doing on the road. Yep. You know, so yeah. But this is the first recorded gospel songs. The first one was called "Rock Me." Okay. Which was a massive and controversial hit. She also recorded "That's All," "My Man and I," and "The Lonesome Road." All of them were instant hits and establishing her an overnight sensation and one of the first commercially successful gospel recording artists.
Wow.
This is in the 30s. Now,
never
Rock
heard
Me,
of her.
I know.
Rock Me, why was it controversial?
It was controversial because there's a part in it where she's like, so even though it's a gospel song, the way there's a growl she does, or "rock me," it made it sound sexual.
Ooh, girl.
And this is what they mean about like secular versus like, you know, religious. Like it's again, so it was controversial with her people. But again, it was designated as a gospel song, but the way she's singing it sounds very secular. It's like there's even a different approach to the way you sing gospel versus the way you sing R&B, the way you sing pop. There's a slight difference. Now, a lot of the genres have meshed up. And unfortunately, I feel like a lot of the young artists don't know the difference.
You're going to teach them, Lavetta.
No, trust me, I am not a pro, but having grown up in the church and having the privilege of having a pastor and a very like spirited and wonderful musical world in my church, whenever I watch like musical competition shows or when you see white artists who are trying to replicate, the riffing is the thing. Riffing is like comes out of gospel music, in a lot of ways. And I'm like, they're singing in church, and they don't quite know what they're doing. Like they don't know the purpose of riffing. It's all the it's all of that, and it's like they're just doing it, but it's like they don't really know the source of it or the reason that the artist is choosing to do those kinds of things. Like that kind of stuff annoys me. So when I'm watching, I'm like, just sing the damn song. Just sing the fucking song.
I get it, because first of all, I'm a snob too about so many things. But second of all, like it just comes off as not the song. And when you see it, when it's done correctly, you're not questioning it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's natural. It makes sense. It's like when I see Shakespeare being done by and I love him, but Keanu Reeves, dude, be a movie star and give to the world. You're amazing, but maybe don't mutter Shakespeare's beautiful lines. Maybe you should enunciate a little. Anyways, I know that's not the point at all.
Team Keanu, so I will say that was when he was much younger. And didn't realize that he shouldn't be doing Shakespeare. He shouldn't be doing Shakespeare with a dude accent.
I was so mad.
Dude.
And yet, he's great. Did you see the movie Always Be My Maybe?
Of course.
Oh my God, I could watch it all day. I make people watch that scene with him. Listen, if you haven't watched this movie, it's Ali Wong. It's a year or two. Her. It was 3 years ago, actually.
Yeah, before the pandemic. Yeah.
Watch it again. If you it's so funny, and it's and Keanu Reeves is,
and we love Keanu Reeves, and I heard that he's the best guy in the world, and we love him.
Too.
So he was very young, and I remember when I saw it, he was like, "Dude," it's like, "No, you do not deliver Shakespeare."
Listen, when I first met my husband, and he was like, "I thought Keanu was good," I almost left him. I almost broke up with the man who really should be my husband, because he's the only one who could deal with someone like me. But I was like, I need a minute to process what you just said.
I know.
And
I know.
All right. As a total side note, you can go on.
So back to Rock Me, but she performed it kind of sexual, even though it's a gospel song. So that's why it was kind of controversial. Now, Rock Me would later be cited as being a major influence on many rock and roll singers such as Elvis, Little Richard, and Jerry Lee Lewis.
Okay.
So they're children. And probably not even born when the song comes out, or just being born. And again, I cannot stress to you how much she was everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere. She was a huge star. Okay.
That's amazing.
Now, a short while later, because these records did so well, she signed a 10-year contract.
Wow.
And many churchgoers were shocked by the mixture, again, of even though these singles were gospel songs, but they felt like it was a mixture of gospel sound, bass lyrics with a secular sound of music.
But
because again, the chords are different. You use different chords, and people who are into music can explain this much better than me. But they were kind of shocked, and not everybody was happy about her success, because they felt like the change, a lot of her old, stomping ground. And again, she's a veteran of the church circuit of performing.
Yeah.
So many of them felt a little betrayed because they felt like she was kind of selling out musically. And I mean, some historians speculate, though, that and she would hint at it later, that she felt a little pressure around this time to sing the kind of music that her manager and her label heads were giving her.
I was just going to ask that.
Yeah, because she's 23.
Exactly. She's still a child. In my head, now that I have children, I understand that 20s is now still children, because my children will never grow up, and that's a problem for them, but not for me. So,
but yeah, she she felt a little pressure, but she's thinking this is what we've been working for. Also, keep in mind, she's a single lady now, divorced single woman, and her mother was with her still. They're very close. So she has her mother and herself to take care of. And they're offering you a 10-year contract.
I mean, I don't blame her.
Yeah.
At all. And this is a very common music industry thing. Like, it's still to this day.
Actually, you know what this reminded me of? I don't know if people realize that Amy Grant came out, in the 90s?
Yes.
And that song, Baby, Baby? Because Amy Grant came out of the religious tour circuit as well. And when she came out, I remember one of my aunt and uncle, they were very, very religious. I don't think they were Pentecostal, but maybe they were. But they were like super religious. And I remember my aunt being so mad. She was just like,
really?
Yeah, like she turned away from God. So, yeah. That was in the 90s.
And you know what, though? Everyone's going to have their opinion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't mean that the things you are doing for the secular community is a bad thing. Does that make sense?
And you know what? The secular audiences ate it up. They loved it. They were like, because keep in mind, a lot of the audiences are Black listeners, as well as then white people are like, what are those Black people doing over there? And then they're like, this is great. But like the Black people are like, because it reminds them, all of them are being made to go to church. So this is all familiar to them, but it's fresh, it's hip, it's newer, it's more hip. It's not like fuddy-duddy religious, even though these are gospel songs. It's like hip though. So all of this sounds familiar to them. They like the mixture that, Ray Charles did the same thing. He came out of the church. And when he started performing, they were like, why are you singing the devil's music with like this gospel tinge?
I'm sorry. It's a Wonderful World is the devil's music. Can we talk about that for a minute?
Earlier stuff is earlier stuff. But now later in 1942, in reference to this, music critic Maury Denker described Rosetta's Rock Me as, and he said, quote, he wrote, quote, it's Sister Rosetta Tharpe for the rock and roll spiritual singing, end quote. Now she would also become a racial pioneer in many ways because her talent was so undeniable. She was so electrifying that, white singing groups wanted to work with her.
Okay.
And throughout her career, she would often play and tour with, a white singing group called the Jordanaires. And this was unusual. White and Black people did not play music together.
That was
which
very
is crazy.
unusual.
Yeah, like it's like Black people create the music and then the white people
steal it
and do an all white band and they play the music, which is not as good as the Black version of it, but white audiences are like, yeah, I can listen to it because white people are playing it.
I think Hairspray just does it.
Yes.
Like there's a montage that just really defines a generation of music thievery. You know, it's just literally like, it's good. And then like, oh, that does sound like every other white song. Oh, they did. That makes, I see what happened. Okay.
Well, this goes back to, oh gosh, why am I escaping? Why is it, blackface? But what's it? Minstrelsy. This is all minstrelsy. For those of you who don't know, minstrelsy basically, well, there's different versions of how it started, but basically in I believe the 1840s or the 1850s, a white traveling actor was visiting the South and he was visiting a plantation. And this is an actor. And he observed the slaves performing probably on their one day off or one afternoon off. And he observed them singing, probably spirituals and like just having fun, blowing off steam.
Yeah.
And he came up with the idea, or a group of them came up with the idea to recreate what he had seen and put it on stage and paint his face black. And it was massively successful.
Yeah.
So much so that it went all over the world. That's why sometimes you'll see like remnants of minstrelsy, like blackface. Like I think in Asia, you'll see like blackface toothpaste. You're like, what the fuck is this? But it all began in the mid 1800s. White people saying, oh, let's pretend to be black people on stage and paint our faces black. And then what's so fucked up is that black performers also had to use blackface in order to be able to get bookings and work as an actor during this time. But that's how successful, you know how like K-pop is huge? Minstrelsy was 10 times as popular as K-pop was.
So, Lavetta, first of all, thank you for that background. I didn't know it was like such a simple moment that
I mean, it's up for debate, but that's one of the explanations. Like, but it's basically to describe why white people started wearing blackface and performing.
I've seen like old video. I don't know why, but of a minstrel show, and it is the most
disturbing. It's confusing. You're like, why am I watching this?
And they don't make sense because they change the language to sound as dumb as like for the one
quote,
clip
unquote,
that
black.
I saw. Yeah, quote unquote, right? Like with watermelon and like it just feeds the stereotype, and America and I guess the entire world, I didn't realize that, just loved that. Wow.
Well, what they were responding to was the rhythm of the black musicians who were not getting any money. That's why we need our reparations, but run us our money. But but that's why. So
Lavetta, what's your Venmo?
I know, right? Hey, I will put it out. Send me some money.
Make that money, girl.
Send me some money. I'm all about that. Venmo a black person a day. But like, so we're in the 40s. So we're like basically 90 years, 100 years away from the start of minstrelsy. But now black people are actually doing their own musicians because they're out of bondage and they're traveling around. So that's why when you see these black performers, that's why the music resonates, because Americans are already, this is already in the American soil, in American air. So by the time these black performers, that's why when you see these black performers, that's why when jazz became a thing in the 1915, 1916, the 20s, white people are like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then they, what's the word that people use? I think the word is
steal. They stole it. That's the word. Sometimes I forget words, but I'm pretty sure that that's the one that is appropriate to this conversation.
Appropriated.
So so much.
So she, again, but she was just amazing. So she was so successful. She's got albums out, now, unconsciously, all of us have been taught basically that guitars are for boys.
Oh, God.
And the same was true during that time. So much so that she would actually play with that kind of thinking, and she would often boast that she could, quote, play like a man, end quote. And she would challenge men to battles at the Apollo.
Oh my God, I love her.
Yeah.
Yes. Get it, girl.
Yeah.
I wish I could see that.
I know, right? Like, they was just like, this girl can't do anything, and she just play them under the table. Like, she was amazing. Now, she also continued her recording success throughout the 40s. She was one of the few gospel singers and black singers to record songs for the troops overseas.
Oh, wow.
And as you can imagine, the black troops were probably thrilled because they probably had seen her in person. She recorded a song called Strange Things Happening Every Day in 1944 with Sammy Price, Decca's house boogie woogie pianist. She also appeared in Billboard magazine, Harlem Hit Parade. And this, in 1944, this record, Harlem Hit Parade, is called the first rock and roll record.
What? Really? Wait.
Yeah.
Nobody knows this. Okay.
Some people know this.
I'm sure I'm just ignorant. But say it again. She recorded the first album that was considered a rock and roll album?
not only did she record the first gospel song, she recorded the first rock and roll record in 1944.
Okay, I'm so mad that I didn't know that.
Yep, a black woman did that. A black woman did it first. So, with all her success, she didn't slow down. She just continued to tour. And then in the 1940s, she had a performance with a fellow musician, female musician called Marie Knight. And the two decided to tour together on a circuit. So they were double headliners.
Wow.
Yeah. And they traveled around together. Yeah. Now, when I say tour, black people touring around this time, it was like not fancy. It was not glamorous. Jim Crow made it so that they couldn't stay in a lot of places. Yeah, it was just like, but they actually toured together, like without anybody else as a duo.
Oh.
And they recorded a hit song called Up Above My Head and Gospel Train. And they became really close. So close, in fact, that many people in the gospel community and the worldwide speculated that Marie and Rosetta maintained a romantic and sexual relationship.
You know what? I hope they did. And I hope it was beautiful and they lived their best fucking life. That is what I hope. I hope they found like Nirvana, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In this fucked up world, they got that
They
joy.
probably did.
Yeah.
Now, even though she never publicly came out, because that just wasn't a thing for a lot of queer people, and a lot of them didn't even have the language to express what they were feeling or their experiences in life. So many of Rosetta and Marie's friends report that they were indeed a couple.
Okay.
Like it was an open secret. And many historians believe that throughout her life, she had many relationships with men and women.
She was probably bisexual.
Yeah.
That's real.
Which is interesting, though, because
it's
again, this is a very
long time, right?
I know this is a very religious woman. So, yeah,
you know,
I think it's just very interesting. She's just
yes, but the reality is, like, you are who you are.
But I agree with you. But I think I'm just so impressed with her that she lived her life the way she wanted to. But I can only imagine it during this time. They didn't have the language. They didn't have. I wonder if a part of her thought she was going to hell, but she couldn't help herself. Like, we just will never know because people didn't have. There's no therapy. People aren't going to therapy and talk about their feelings. They just read the Bible.
Right. And I wonder, and this is very ignorant of me, I have no idea, but my experience growing up in like the 80s in a world that was pretty homophobic. Yeah, very homophobic, I want to say. As a child, I learned what gay was when I was 11. And when I learned it, I learned that it was between two men. I learned it because Rock Hudson died. And the response was like, what? Well, he was what? Oh, it's between two men. And then a year later, I'm having an argument with a friend who tells me that women can be gay also. And I'm like, no, this is where I come from. So I'm wondering if back then there really was no language. So maybe she didn't even think of it as, it was just they were very good friends and they had feelings like that were ill-defined.
Yeah.
Good. Live your best life. You don't need to judge yourself.
But it sounds like if she had other relationships with other women and men, it sounds like she accepted that part of her, and I hope so. That is my hope for her.
Me too.
Now, starting in 1949, their partnership started to take a downturn, and also Mahalia Jackson was starting to become the gospel voice.
I've heard of her.
Of that time, but Marie also wanted to do a solo act and wanted to do popular music. Okay. So she wanted to, take her stuff in a different direction. But also around this time, Marie's lost her children and her mother in a house fire.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, that's horrific. Ooh.
So they ended their partnership and but remained friends throughout their lives. And so now Rosetta's she's finding the slump in her career and then what to do. And so she's just trying to sort of figure out what is her next move. But that same year in 1949, to commemorate her first anniversary of being a homeowner in Richmond, Virginia, she put in she did a concert at the Altria Theater. And she then adopted some singers called the Twilight Singers that became her backup singers for the rest of her career, called the Rosettes.
Cute.
Adopted? Now, they basically just became part of her traveling thing. I know that's how they say it, but it's just like they became her backup singers. They became her pips. So, now she also got married again. She would get married like 4 times, I believe. All in all. And
you got to try things on to see if they fit.
I know.
That's all she's doing,
That's all. I mean, because you, as an artist, you have to innovate. You have to figure out how to get the word out. Now, some people think that this next marriage was a publicity stunt, though, because she basically married this guy. She had just met this guy. His name was Russell Morrison, but her managers came up with this idea that they would promote this as a concert wedding, and they sold tickets.
Oh my God.
25,000 people showed up.
Shut up.
In Washington, D.C. in 1951 to watch she and Russell get married. And it became a concert afterwards. And it was like huge. But apparently, by all accounts, Russell started taking it like he wanted to become her manager. So he signed on as her manager. And people were like, he was not a manager. He was not a good manager. But it worked because 25,000 people showed up.
I mean, it worked for this like moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, he would become her manager for the rest of her life, which a lot of people feel like that's the reason that more people don't know about her, why her legacy has not been as widespread as it should be, because her talent was undeniable and enormous, but Russell was not a good manager.
That's such a shame.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Just a little bit more here. So she continued to record throughout the 50s. And in 1957, she was booked for a month-long tour in the UK by British trombonist Chris Barber.
Okay.
And she continued to tour nonstop through 1959, and her home base became Philadelphia. And when she was in Philadelphia, she'd like to go fishing with her husband and her dog Chubby on her days off. Now, side note, the couple bought their concrete brick row house in 1962 for $13,450 in Yorktown section of North Philadelphia, which was added to the historic register in 2022.
Oh, wow. That's very recent.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Also, can we talk about a house sold for $13,000? It's fine. I'm totally fine.
Yeah.
Go on.
That won't even get you a car nowadays. So
no, it will literally not. Okay, sorry. Go on.
In the early 1960s, she toured England again, but more extensively this time, capitalizing on the new interest in folk music. Now, white British people went crazy for black music in the 60s.
Yeah.
Like, they freaked the fuck out. Yeah. And she was part of this touring of, like, by this time, like, veteran black blues and soul, jazz singers and gospel singers. And it was like, there's actually, when you go on YouTube, you see this, there's this like famous video of her singing in the rain in this like old train station. She's on this platform and she has on like this, I think it's a fur coat, and she has this guitar and she's singing. And when she opens her mouth, the audience of like mostly really young white British people freak the fuck out, because they've been listening to like white, less quality versions of black American music.
They must have lost their damn minds.
So when they hear the real thing,
yes,
it's like, holy shit. Like, they freak the fuck out.
Also, the 60s were definitely, it's the civil rights movement. It was a time of like eyes opening up to like history, and young people, like, as we do know, started asking questions and being like, where did things come from, and also, why is every old person racist? Like, what's happening?
Well, also, The English don't have that kind of racism, at least against for American black people. Like,
right?
England has their own thing, right?
They do have their own problems. Yeah.
But like, they're like, black people in America are awesome. They're like, this music is clearly superior. And because they're not coming to listening to the music with their preconceived notions, they're like, this is amazing. Bob Dylan even once said, quote, I'm sure there are a lot of young English guys who picked up electric guitars after getting a look at her, end quote, during this time.
That's awesome.
Like, cause you see her, she has this electric guitar and you're just like, because in the modern world, we associate rock and roll, particularly guitar players, with men, and particularly white men with long hair.
Yeah.
That was like codified in the 60s and the 70s, right?
Yes.
But it's because, and a lot of people directly bring it back to this performance and this tour.
Wow.
They saw her with this electric guitar and then other black men with this, like other black people with, and they were just like, what is going on? So they picked up a guitar. And then the rest is history. So
that's amazing.
That's why I have a theory that's why sometimes we have like some of our best blue-eyed soul singers, meaning white soul singers, come from England, because I really feel like they approach the music, because at its core, soul music is working class music. So they really approached it like with no preconceived notions, like they wanted to replicate and give their own spin on something because they genuinely admired the like soul music. So they're not trying to like sing better than black people. They're not trying to do all the riffing and stuff. They're just trying to make it sound as soulful as possible.
Yeah, from their own experience, which I think is different than the white musicians in America thieving.
Or like trying to feel like sometimes it's like you're putting on a character. It's like what we tell actors, don't play a baker, just play a person having a human experience.
Or as Robin Williams said, be yourself.
Be yourself. No, right.
Thank you for letting me have that moment.
R.I.P. Robin Williams. So she continued to have to go on to successful, again, still be successful. She had the first nationally broadcast gospel music television program called TV Gospel Time.
Awesome.
She only received one Grammy nomination in her career for Best Gospel Soul Performance in 1968 for the album Precious Memories.
Okay. Did she win?
Which is no. Now in May of 1964, again, she toured this caravan, this gospel and blues caravan. And this is along with Muddy Waters, Otis Spann, Lily Willie Smith, Reverend Gray Davis.
This is my education. Ain't nothing but the blues. I know everything.
So this is where these British kids were like, what the fuck is going on? Like, it just blew their minds. And it was televised. It just became a huge, huge thing. But again, check out this YouTube video. When you see her on there, you're like, what is going on?
I'm going to watch it. That's amazing.
Yeah. Now, Rosetta's biographer said in 2018 that, quote, she influenced Elvis Presley. She influenced Johnny Cash. She influenced Little Richard. She influenced everybody. Dang. And when they asked her about music, about rock and roll, she reportedly said, quote, oh, these kids in rock and roll, this is just sped up rhythm and blues. I've been doing that forever, end quote. Again, bitches, a black woman wielding a Gibson Les Paul SG did it first. Before Little Richard.
I love her.
Before Chuck Berry.
Oh my God. Yes, girl.
Sister Rosetta Clark did it. So now, so she continued to perform throughout the 60s and early 70s, but she began to have health problems. I think all the touring. And I think you just don't go to the hospital, because one of her friends said that she saw like a little black spot on one of her feet. Oof. And was like, you need to go and have that checked out. She's like, oh, yeah. And then it got bigger. And then she finally went to the hospital, to the doctors and realized that she had diabetes.
Oh, no.
But in 1970, she had a stroke. Oof. And due to diabetes complications, one of her legs had to be amputated.
Ay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
but she still kept working and making music a few years later. But a few years later, on October 9th, 1973, on the eve of scheduled recording session, she actually died in Philadelphia.
Oh.
After having another stroke. So, But yeah, like it's the traveling on the road. It's like hard on the body. And you're not eating well, and then you're not getting exercise, and then the stress of being Black in America. That's a whole nother thing.
Is that stressful? Is that a thing?
Yeah. Now, her last known recording was in 1970 for a Danish TV show, singing Thomas Dorsey's gospel standard, Take My Hand, Precious Lord. Oh, I love that song. Now, despite making a good living as a gospel singer, she was buried without a headstone in 1973. But in 2008, a group of enthusiasts raised money to place a marble headstone on her grave as a tribute to her as this trailblazing woman. Now I'm going to speed up because this is getting a little long. But 3 years later, the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission placed a historical marker outside her home in North Philadelphia. And since her death, musicians like I said, Johnny Cash, Aretha Franklin, Little Richard, and Tina Turner all celebrated her influence on their work, which helped reinvigorate her forgotten legacy. A recording from the 1960s of her playing her version of the traditional gospel, Up Above My Head, was featured in the popular in Amelie. I didn't realize that was featured in the movie Amelie from 2001. In 2008, a concert was held at the Keswick Theater in Glenside to raise funds, like I said, for the grave marker. And the governor came out and said a few words to give her, her due. Now, some of her accolades. So over the course of her career, Sister Rosetta Tharpe, aka Rosetta Tharpe, recorded over 9 albums and had 3 top 10 hits and 1 top 20 hit in the 1940s.
Wow.
Since her death, numerous live recordings have also been released. But some other honors and other like notable quotes that people have said about her, according to Cleveland.com, Rosetta Tharpe, quote, plugged into an electric guitar in the late 1930s and became a rock and roll star before the men considered the pioneers of rock and roll had dreamt of doing so.
Yes.
She's the godmother of rock and roll who influenced every musician traditionally identified with helping launch the genre in the 1950s, end quote. I know. In 1998, the U.S. Postal Service created a Rosetta Tharpe stamp in her honor. In 2003, the album Shout, Sister, Shout, featuring contributions by various artists, was released as a tribute to her music. In 2012, she was inducted into the Arkansas Black Hall of Fame. In 2013, American Masters created a film about her, where her biographer, Professor Gail Wall of George Washington University, stated, quote, "Shout, sister, shout." It's not an image I think we're used to thinking about when we think about rock and roll history. We don't think about the Black woman behind the young white man, end quote. Now, in 2014, she was inducted into the Cotton Plant Historical Museum Entertainers Hall of Fame. In 2017, Highway 17 from Cotton Plant to Brinkley was renamed the Sister Rosetta Tharpe Memorial Highway. In 2018, a marker was installed at the museum as a stop on the Arkansas Delta Music Trail. In 2017, she was finally inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
I was going to ask about that.
In 2017, she's described by the Hall.
Insane. Go on.
Yeah, by the Hall of Fame site as, quote, the first guitar heroine of rock and roll. Of the end quote. Of the nomination, Will Hermes of Rolling Stone wrote, quote, "No artist has been overdue for recognition than Sister Rosetta Tharpe. The spirit of Sister Rosetta Tharpe is conjured every time a rock musician plugs in and aims for rapture," end quote. Now, in 2020, she was honored by the Grammys with a Lifetime Achievement Award and giving the moniker the godmother of rock and roll. Last year, in 2022, she was featured in the Baz Luhrmann film Elvis and played by actress and Grammy-nominated artist Yola, who grew up listening to Rosetta Tharpe in her hometown of Bristol, England. And then there was a play about her life that was an adaptation of Professor Gail Wall's biography, and several theatrical productions throughout the country now. So she's gotten a resurgence in the last 5 years or so, 5 to 7 years, but She is remarkable. Like, I had kind of heard of her, but it was only, I think, in the last couple years when I saw that video on YouTube about like her being in England on that railroad platform and watching her.
Yes.
Because by that time she's middle aged. But so seeing this middle aged Black woman like you're just like, what am I watching? Like,
that is amazing. P.S. Ain't nothing wrong with middle age.
Ain't nothing wrong with middle age. Yeah.
But also, wow, I can't believe I've never heard of her. She sounds
that's
amazing.
my woman. Yeah. So that's my notorious woman. So who's your notorious woman this week? I'm sorry, that was a little long.
That was long. Mine's not as long, but just as, I mean, so differently amazing. Okay. So my notorious woman is Susan, Ahn Cuddy. She's Korean. I'm going to refer to her as Susan because I don't want to butcher her name. Right. So she was the eldest daughter of Korean independence activists. Ahn Chang-ho and Helen Ahn, born Helen Lee. She was born in 1915, so they were born in the same year. That's hilarious.
Wow. Okay.
Right? In Los Angeles, California. So she's like us because she's in the same city we are. And her parents were the first married Korean couple to immigrate to the United States in 1902. I didn't know it was such a recent thing. And the house she grew up in became a haven for many Korean immigrants. The Young Korean Academy made its headquarters there, like as she's growing up. It was a resource center for the immigrants. The first Korean American citizen named So Jae-pil, I said that wrong, I am so sorry, lived there for a while at 106 North Figueroa Street during the Japanese occupation of Korea. So I didn't realize that Korean immigration is such a recent thing, because in my head, everyone's been coming to America.
Well, you're thinking of like the Chinese immigrants that started coming in the 1880s in large numbers, and then Japanese immigrants. But yeah, Korea, I could definitely see. Yeah.
I mean, Jews snuck in the 1500s. I mean, they weren't like actively Jewish or anything. They were just like, what? No, we're white. It's fine. But you know, underground, they could do stuff. But I didn't realize that was such a very new thing. I also,
now, do they mean like first Korean immigrant ever? That sounds hard.
Doesn't it though?
I don't know about that.
I mean, listen, if you're listening and you have ideas, we'll give you our Gmail afterwards and you can tell us the reality. Because this is, and also, so the Japanese were colonizing Korea at the time. And you're shaking your head like, duh, Miriam. Everybody knows that.
No. A lot of people don't know that. The Japanese were like, we're going to colonize all of our cousins. Yeah.
I had no idea. And I was like, oh my God, this is a whole thing.
They colonized parts of China too. So.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah. The Japanese were.
Yeah. I mean, they were Axis. So I did know that. So maybe they didn't have the greatest, love of humanity at some points. But like not the people. Obviously, I'm talking about the bad government.
Yeah, the government.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, I can't. I live in America, so we got.
I only know that because that was my area of expertise in college. That's what I majored in. So, but yeah, a lot of people don't know.
What countries did not try to colonize something? You know what I'm saying?
I mean,
we colonized. The British can't stop.
I mean, but a lot of people don't know like the Japanese aggression in Asia, because the Japanese had a vision of colonizing all of Asia under their banner, which is so interesting because the Japanese also, I mean, there's racism with Japanese, but it's like for us, particularly Korean and Japanese people, they share a lot of like physical and cultural like similarities, but the Japanese is like, but then when you know Japanese ancient history, you're like, you guys got your writing system from China, and a lot of the folklore and the grammar of Japanese is very Korean. So it's like
Really?
all of
Yeah,
your
it's
culture
just-
came from Korea and like
Can't we
China,
all just
but
get along, you guys? You don't need to own everything, you know.
yeah.
Okay, so she was the third child of 5, and she was the oldest daughter. And she always attributed her parents', she says, sacrifice and dedication to the Korean independence cause as defining a role in her own identity and her own values. So when she was young, she worked for many of her dad's independence organizations in Los Angeles. She played a lot of sports. She was very athletic. She played baseball and field hockey. When she was at Los Angeles City College, she was in charge of the women's baseball team, and she also played second base. She played for get this, the Bing Crosby Croonerettes. I said
She's
what
an
I said.
all-American girl.
Softball team. And she had to stop playing to keep her amateur status to play college baseball. Like she was badass.
Wow.
So she graduated from San Diego State University in 1940, and then she joined the Navy in 1942, where she would serve until 1946. So after Japan bombed Pearl Harbor, she enlisted in the U.S. Naval Reserve Midshipmen's School at Smith College. I can say that. I can. I just did. In Northampton, Massachusetts. She became the first Asian American woman in the Navy. So that wasn't easy because people are racist and mean. Anti-Asian sentiment in the country was high. Remember, this is after Pearl Harbor, and this was around when they were setting up camps and sending, and white people just don't like anyone. You know, like there was no.
But it's also, I mean, it's, yeah, they're setting up internment camps for Japanese Americans, but I often like to say they didn't set them up for Italian Americans or German Americans.
Nope.
I'm just saying, like, it's easy to pick on the Asian people. Just saying. I ain't put them in camps. I'm just saying.
You make a good point.
Mm-hmm.
So quote from her, she told the biographer John Cha, who wrote the book Willow Tree Shade, the Susan Ahn Cuddy story, that was written in 2002. Quote, "A lot of people thought that women didn't belong in the service. That made us try harder." So she felt joining the Navy was a way to help free Korea from the harsh Japanese colonial era rule, and was eager to join the Navy to fight the Japanese. So she's just pissed at the Japanese, which, fair enough.
But then Americans are like, ain't you Japanese? And it's like,
right?
No, I'm Korean, damn it. I'm a Korean American.
Also, how many Japanese people were very American? All right.
Yes.
You know what?
They have a whole name for it, Nisei.
Oh, really?
That's second great. Generation or first generation. Yeah, they're Americans, people. That's how that works in America.
Yeah. Also, like when the government does something, it doesn't mean the people are doing it too.
Again, Nazis were not put in internment camps. I'm just saying.
They weren't. So they should have been. There, I'll say it.
They should have been.
Nazis are bad.
In fact, yeah, Nazis are fucking bad. But in fact, during World War II, Black performers like Lena Horne, they tried to force her to perform for segregated audiences. So for Black soldiers and then for white soldiers. But with the white soldiers, they actually brought in Nazi POWs.
I'm sorry. I know it's a podcast, so I should talk rather than just sit here with my mouth open. But wow.
So they treated the actual Nazis better than actual Americans because they were Black. But she refused. She's like, I'm not performing for fucking Nazis.
Because Lena Horne is amazing.
Yeah.
But what the fuck, America? Yeah. Jesus.
But I'm sorry to interrupt you. Yeah.
No, it's fine. Let's take a moment to be upset about liking Nazis more than Black people. Guys, stop it with the Nazis. They're not good. They're bad.
They're not good.
Okay. And they'll probably find something about you to dislike. And then it's bad, you guys. It's
Let's
really
all
bad.
agree. Even German people agree.
Oh, German people are the first to agree.
Are bad.
Bad. Bad. Bad. You're okay to say that they're bad. And fight your friend who says, no, they're not bad. Say, no, friend. They are bad.
You're no longer my friend.
Do your duty. All right. Did you hear how
As soon
I
as
said
you
Eugene?
open up your mouth and be like, but the Nazis had a good... Nope. We're not friends. Nope.
No, I'm no longer friends with you.
I
Or
can't
I'm
be around
divorcing you
idiots.
or whatever, whatever you need to say to get your point across. All right. So, she worked her way up in the Navy. She became an instructor on Link Trainer flight simulators in 1943, teaching aviators how to maneuver a simulator cockpit. She became the first female aerial gunnery officer in the Navy. So she trained fighter pilots how to shoot down enemy aircraft. Listen, she's Tom Cruise. Do you see what I'm saying?
She is.
She's on her motorcycle. Okay, that's not how the Top Gun. I just saw the movie. I know I'm late, but I saw it finally.
I haven't seen it yet. I'm waiting for it to be free. Is that wrong?
I think it's free if you have HBO Max.
Oh, it's on HBO Max now?
Girl,
Okay.
it's free. Go watch it. It's good.
I'm gonna watch it.
It's like nobody can fly this plane except for the 55-year-old, and everyone's like, yeah, that makes sense. It's so enjoyable.
I love Tom Cruise. I know it's cheesy, but I love Tom Cruise.
I mean, he was like, I used to watch, anyways, sorry, I did not watch Top Gun every weekend as a teenager. I did, though. All right. So she had to... All right, I'm laughing. She knew how to work some guns that men were having difficulty with. She understood how to do it. So there was one incident, as she tells her biographer, where a white male pilot protested having to take directions from her because she was both Asian and female. And that was just too much for this white man. And she says to him, quote, "Down here, you will shoot when I tell you to shoot." And then he did.
I love her.
Is she great? Yes,
I love her so much.
She eventually became a lieutenant and went on to work for the U.S. Navy Intelligence and the Library of Congress. So in her personal life, in 1947, she married Chief Petty Officer Francis X. Cuddy, or Frank, as they called him, who was an Irish American. They defied anti-miscegenation laws and wed at the only place that would marry them, which was a Navy chapel in Washington, D.C. So, like, props for the Navy chapel.
That's how people can understand. Miscegenation. The mixing of races. I won't tolerate no miscegenation. You have to say it with a Southern accent. I can do it because I'm Southern, so I can make fun of us.
I'm not allowed to join you in this, but I am allowed to watch.
And a George Wallace accent. Miscegenation not on my watch.
I'm dying.
I'm sorry. I can't help it.
No, don't even apologize. Yes. Yeah. It's like if you make the word long enough, it becomes okay. No, that's not. It's still not okay.
That's like a word that one of my favorite characters in Raising Arizona, the Nicolas Cage character. Oh my God, so good. It is. I love dumb characters who use big words, and he would use that sounds like a word he would use. Miscegenation.
Yes. And that to me is just like, let's make this word super long so it sounds like really smart as opposed to the stupid shit it really is.
That it is, yeah.
So she worked for the National Security Agency in Washington, D.C. during the Cold War, and she was in charge of a think tank of over 300 agents working in the Russia section. She received a fellowship from the National Security Agency to study at University of Southern California in 1956. She worked on many top secret projects for the Department of Defense and other agencies during her service with the U.S. government until 1959. So she just like climbed them ranks, you know.
Amazing.
Her accomplishments are even considered remarkable and unparalleled today. She So her husband helped finance. Her family had a restaurant, actually not too far from our neck of the woods. It was called the Moongate Restaurant. And they moved to Los Angeles to raise their children here. And also they wanted to win her mother's acceptance of her husband. I don't know if she ever did, in fact, accept her non-Korean husband. They had
and again, this is not racism. The mother's just like, what about a nice Korean boy?
Yeah. How about there's a difference?
And then you know what happens in those families? Then the children are born, the grandbabies are born, and then grandma melts. That's what
I
happens.
mean, yeah, what are you going to do? Knock the babies? Never.
Yeah.
It's babies. They had, speaking of babies, 2 children, Philip Flip and Christine. In 1959, she left the intelligence community so she can spend more time with her children, and it seems to help with the restaurant. So her brother, Philip Ahn, was a pioneering Asian American actor, and she had a sister too, Sura, and they all ran a popular Chinese restaurant. I should say it was in Panorama City. Her brother died in 1978, so she filled the role as family representative, and she worked to archive her family's records, and she managed the restaurant until 1990.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she just kept going. In 2003, the State Assembly of California of District 28 named her the Woman of the Year in honor of her commitment to public service. October 5th, 2006, she received the American Courage Award from the Asian American Justice Center in Washington, D.C. As she aged, as she got older, she remained active. She spoke at Navy functions and Korean American community events, and she even campaigned for Barack Obama. She is a breast cancer survivor, so she helped raise money for that cause. She was honored with numerous accolades of government bodies and nonprofits. So the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors designated a Susan Ahn Cuddy Day. I don't even know what day it is. It didn't tell me. It was just a day. Supervisor Mark Ridley Thomas, who introduced the declaration, was an especially devoted fan. This is what he said. They were all firsts as an Asian American woman in a man's world. Anti-Asian sentiment was brazenly prevalent, but that didn't deter Susan Ahn Cuddy. She just knew what her mission was. She died at her home in Northridge, California on June 24th, 2015. She was 100 years old when she died.
Wow.
Isn't she amazing?
She's amazing.
And didn't we not know anything?
I've never heard of this woman. And the fact that she was in the service during World War II.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Just the idea of showing up every day as a woman with a high-powered position in the Navy and is Asian at a time when I can't imagine there was a higher anti-Asian sentiment in this country than after the Japanese.
Well, there was one before when they actually passed legislation, the Anti-Chinese Act.
Yeah, no, that's true. That was in the legislation. It was in the name.
But your point is that
in our
anti-Asian
memory,
anti-Asian sentiment is part of American history, and like even the recent China virus, anti-Asian attacking random people on the street who are minding their fucking business. Fuck all you motherfuckers who are attacking. And then I see you motherfuckers, you especially attack old people.
Yeah.
You fucking coward. I will kick you down a deep, dark hole if I ever catch somebody doing that. But anyway,
listen,
I digress.
Lavetta is very strong, so I would be very afraid and maybe stop being so racist. Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, the reality is obviously it's just never left, right?
No, it's never left.
In terms of how on high alert white America is, essentially, right? Yeah. I mean, that was a very high alert. We're suddenly, yeah.
Because I think, she was born at a time where we didn't have these advances for minorities, and so the fact that she was able to accomplish all of this without, people at least pre-civil rights movement, where, because I think people forget that civil rights movement helped all minorities and white women.
Yes,
by the way, but the fact that she is an all-American girl, I just love her life, and I'm a big proponent of trying to get more stories of particularly Asian Americans.
Yeah,
because I feel like Americans, even in the industry, it's a story from Korea, and which is great. We love those stories, but also you have Korean Americans right here. They have stories they want to tell too.
We live in California. She's our neighbor.
Yeah.
And And the fact that that to me, that's such a huge accomplishment. She did it in such a difficult time. And you and I have never heard of her. Like,
I've never heard of her.
We should have heard of her.
Yeah.
Because I want this movie, Lavetta.
Yeah.
She's
I
Tom
do too.
Cruise. She's Tom Cruise.
Thank you so much for sharing her. And could you actually say her name one last time as we wrap up?
Listen, I can try.
I know. I always do that.
You do? Okay. Susan Ahn Cuddy.
Susan Ahn Cuddy. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Welcome. We had two amazing ladies, pioneers, born in 1950.
I know, right? How random is that? And who that more people should know about. So hopefully, we're doing our little part and helping people learn and, also have fun. These are kick-ass ladies these are our kind of ladies. Like, these, like they were called bitches in their day because they were doing something right. Those men that she was teaching how to correctly hold the firearm they were allowed to utilize. They were like, she's a bitch. They walked out of that room.
And they were pulling all the Charlie Chan racist like voices out.
God.
She just probably just so awful. I can't remember. I just can't even imagine. So, but these women, really... yeah, just terrible. Like, but thank you so much for sharing that with us. And hopefully our listeners will also be inspired to go and learn a little bit more about our ladies.
Yeah.
Do your own research. We're not #not historians. We always just give you a little bit.
Yep.
To whet your appetite. So you go and find out even more information, and hopefully if you have writers and creators out there, you write a series and put these people in it, and
yes,
a movie and something.
Yes.
And,
I would watch this movie. I know you need more than me, but still, it's a start.
A lot of people would watch it, though. A lot of people would be like, oh, are you kidding me? Well, guys, that wraps it up for another episode of Notorious Women Podcast. Remember to follow us on all the things. Go to iTunes. Give us 5-star reviews. We're not suggesting. We are unabashedly self-promoting.
Listen,
5 stars.
Lavetta, you made a good point the other day. You can choose between giving us 5 stars or giving us 5 stars.
Yeah.
We're letting you choose. Okay.
5 stars. And also leave a comment with your 5-star review. And Miriam's going to tell you how you can find us if you want to email us or follow us on social.
Yes. So follow us on Instagram. It's Notorious Women Podcast. It's pretty easy to find. And email us at Gmail is notoriouswmpod@gmail.com. We also have a Patreon page.
Oh yeah, I don't think it's active yet, so
okay, maybe we'll hold off on
giving that. Yeah, we'll have that up in the next couple of weeks though.
Yeah,
but,
you keep an eye on it. Keep listening, and we'll let you know when it's like fully ready.
Yeah, absolutely, because we have to like start that up and clean it up and make it pretty for you guys because we care.
Yeah, we like a pretty thing. Okay.
Yeah, we like a pretty thing. Yeah, we also like a smart thing. We like pretty and smart.
We like
pretty and smart.
And sometimes,
all right,
Lavetta, you like cruel and vicious, but anyways.
I'm a Snap girl. Snap is the greatest television series in the history of America.
That's definitely an opinion that you have.
All right, guys. We'll see you next week.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.